Hi friends, and welcome to today's video. I'm Jeanette with Vivo Vintage Designs. Today's video should be a lot of fun. I hope that you enjoy it and that you give it a try. Now let's get started. Recently, I came across a coaster online that resembled this one, and when I tried to find it again, I couldn't. This is the only one that I was able to find. Now, this one is vintage, it's ceramic, it's handmade by an artist, and it's $45. And of course, just like any crafter, I said to myself, I can make that. I'm not paying $45 for it. So I pulled out my air dry clay. Now the clay that I'm working with is Jovi, and it's not my favorite, but it's what I had. I prefer the Das air dry clay. So this one was feeling a little bit dry, so off camera I have a little bit of water and I'm adding it to the clay, and I'm going to knead it for a little while, make sure I get all the air pockets out of it. And here I tried to tape a piece of parchment paper to my table, but it kept moving. I think it's because my hands were so dirty with the clay. So I removed it, and then I started to roll out these snakes, and I think I rolled out 8 of them. It took a little while, and trying to get them even was not so easy. I probably should have cut them into smaller pieces, which I learned later on. And you can see I have some wipes on the side there because it's important to try and keep your hands as clean as possible so that you don't transfer the little pieces of clay onto the wet clay. So here you can see I've started to make my little basket weave. So I'm cutting the pieces and I am weaving them over and under, and I'm trying to space them as evenly as I can. And this is really easy. Now here I realized that it looked a little bit too small, so I cut a piece of the clay from one of the long strands and I added it to the bottom. Then I cut another one, rolled it, and added that one to the bottom. The other one I added to the side. Once I was happy with the size and the shape, I adjusted them as well as I could. And I was looking for a clay blade that I have, but of course I couldn't find it. So now I'm taking a brush and I'm using some water to smooth any lumps or any marks that I made in the clay. Now I have to flatten it to make sure that it's level, so that when I place my bottle of water on it, I want this for my nightstand. I keep a bottle of water on my nightstand, and I want to make sure that this is level so that the bottle doesn't fall over. So here I'm taking a palette knife and I'm cutting off the ends of those pieces of clay. Now, I should have done this over a piece of parchment paper because removing it from the surface was a little bit difficult, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment. Again, I'm smoothing out any marks that I made, just using some clean water and a brush. But now I couldn't remove it because it was stuck to the surface. So lucky for me, I have this clay tool that made it easy for me. But you should really do this on parchment paper or even saran wrap, whatever you have. I think parchment paper works best. So here you can see I pulled out my clay tools and I'm using this blade to gently lift it off, and I'm putting it on some parchment paper so that it will dry. And again, just making sure that everything is nice and smooth. Using just a little bit of water. Try not to add too much water to this. Otherwise it softens the clay. So I was happy with that. But I decided to make another one. And I pulled out this piece of, I don't know what it is, acrylic. It's you put your rubber stamps on there so that you can stamp with them. And I've seen other, what do you call that clay? the one that you bake. They use something flat like that to roll the clay. So I tried using it to roll the snakes for this coaster, but I found that it was making the ends kind of hollow. The polymer clay, that's what they use it for. So I stopped using it and just rolled it out with my hands. And you can see I made these snakes a little bit thinner. I wanted to see how it would look if they were not as thick. So here I am weaving them in and out, and this is really easy. Just over and under. So once I was happy with the shape, I played with them a little bit just to adjust them. Then I used that acrylic plate to flatten them. And this time you can see I have my piece of parchment paper underneath. I learned. And I'm using a palette knife to cut the edges off again. And I'm leaving these just a little bit longer, just to make it a little bit different from the first one. Making sure that it's level, but again, I didn't use parchment paper and it stuck to the plate. What I should have done was put parchment paper over it and then flatten it. So now I am smoothing out any marks that I made or any rough edges with a little bit of water and a paintbrush, and we're going to set this one aside as well and let it dry. And I imagine that this, because it's kind of thick, will take a day or two to dry. So what I'll do is I'll leave it for a few hours and then I'll go downstairs and flip it over to make sure that it dries flat. And then when they're all dry, we'll come back and I'll show you how I finish them off. Hopefully I won't have any big cracks or damage. So these took a little bit longer to dry than I had anticipated. They took about 3 days, and I kept flipping them over to make sure that they dried flat. And I was very pleased to see that there were absolutely no cracks. Despite my first opinion on this clay, this turned out really well and I was very happy with it. So here you see that I am sanding any rough edges, and if you have to sand yours, be sure to wear a mask. Now I'm going to add a little speckle to mine, but of course you can either just seal them or you can paint them a solid color. You can do whatever you want that matches your decor. But you can see that I'm adding 2 different colors of acrylic paint to my palette. I'm watering it down, and I'm going to use an old stencil brush to flick these paints onto the coasters. And I'm only going to do one side so I can make them kind of reversible. I can flip them over and have them plain, or I can use them with the speckles showing. So once the speckles are completely dry, I'm going to use the Mod Podge in gloss to seal the front and the back. And once they're dry, I'm going to put them on my nightstand and use them for my little flowers and my water bottle. So if you have any questions about anything you've seen me do in this video, please let me know in the comments. I'll always get back to you. Check the description box for links to the products used, and consider joining our Facebook group where you can share your version of the paintings and techniques learned on this channel. I'd love to see what you come up with, and I'm also very active on that group, so if you ever get stuck or have any questions, you can always reach me there. And here they are on my nightstand. I am so happy with the way they turned out, and I love the way they look. And as always, thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.